Welcome. You're here because you want to get smart, fast, and without feeling overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Today, we're doing just that. We're diving deep into a way of thinking about sex that, well, it might just surprise you.
Yeah, and it could even have some, unexpected ripple effects into your daily life.
So what are we actually talking about?
We're going to explore the concept of Karezza sex, and specifically how it's laid out in the Gentleman's Guide to Karezza sex.
Right, so everything we discussed today, it's coming directly from the ideas in that guide.
That's the plan.
Okay, so first things first, let's be super clear what Karezza isn't.
Good point.
Forget the usual picture of sex. It's all about, reaching orgasm.
Right. This guide describes Karezza as something different, more like a loving, controlled exchange of sexual energy between partners.
So the focus shifts away from that final release.
Exactly. It shifts to the connection itself and, crucially, to keeping that sexual energy sort of contained within the partnership.
Okay, so what's our mission with this deep dive then?
Well, we want to unpack the core principles of Karezza, look at the benefits the guide claims it has for men and for relationships too. And we'll also touch on this related idea called sexual transmutation.
Sexual transmutation. Okay, that sounds like channeling energy elsewhere.
Pretty much the idea that this retained energy can be directed towards other things.
And get this, the guys we're using actually frames Karezza sex as a potential success hack.
Yeah, it's quite a claim.
So we're not just talking bedroom stuff here. We're exploring how this intimate practice might actually boost your focus and energy in general life.
Okay, so let's dig into the guide's starting point. It kind of paints this picture of what it calls the modern male predicament.
The predicament? What's that about?
The idea is that men today face, well, different challenges than in the past. Traditional roles have shifted, maybe,
Okay.
and the guide points to things like increased screen time, suggesting it could be linked to feelings of, anxiety, unease, maybe a dip in confidence.
I can see that.
It also mentions a perceived lack of strong male role models, and yeah, the big one, the widespread issue of porn consumption.
Right. So where does Karezza fit into this predicament?
This is where it gets interesting. The guide basically positions Karezza sex as a possible answer, or maybe an antidote, to that sort of letdown feeling some men get after orgasm.
Ah, the postcoital energy slump.
Exactly. The thinking in the guide is, if you shift the focus away from ejaculation, you might actually end up with more focus and energy afterward.
Instead of feeling drained.
Right. So you know that feeling. This guide suggests Karezza could flip that script entirely, aiming for sustained energy, not depletion.
Okay, that definitely warrants a closer look. So what are the core ideas, the fundamentals of Karezza sex according to this guide?
Well, the first big distinction it makes is between orgasm and ejaculation.
They're not the same thing.
Not necessarily, especially drawing from Taoist philosophy. The guide emphasizes that retaining semen, not just avoiding the feeling of orgasm, is key.
Retaining semen. Why is that seen as important?
Well, this idea from Taoism, it views semen as a kind of vital life force. So retaining it is seen as preserving energy, promoting well-being, not just physically, but maybe even spiritually.
Okay. And does the guide mention things like dry orgasm?
It does, yeah. It touches on practices like dry orgasm or reverse ejaculation, but the main thrust, it really seems to be about intentionally holding back from orgasm itself. That's presented as the key.
Gotcha. So refraining from orgasm, what's the second core idea?
The second one is a really strong emphasis on connection and love within the relationship.
Makes sense.
The guide argues that Karezza sex doesn't just happen in a vacuum, it actually amplifies the good stuff already in a committed partnership.
Like what kind of stuff?
Things like, communication, loyalty, that feeling of being really in sync, mutual care, all that is supposedly enhanced.
To the point of?
To the point of potentially creating what the guide calls a never-ending honeymoon phase, which, let's face it, is a pretty big claim compared to the usual relationship trajectory.
A never-ending honeymoon. Wow. Okay. And how do you build towards that? What's the foundation?
It sounds almost too simple, but the guide really stresses frequent, gentle touch and meaningful kissing.
Just everyday touch and kissing.
Yeah, but done consciously. The idea is that touch sends these powerful messages of love and connection, keeping those intimate feelings kind of simmering gently.
And it mentions women respond particularly well to this.
It does. It points out that women are often very attuned to sensual experiences, and they naturally respond to the energy that's exchanged through touch.
Interesting how it elevates those small things.
Totally. It flat out says you can't have Karezza sex without kissing.
Really? That's specific.
Yeah. Kissing, it explains, communicates this deep affection and desire for intimacy that goes beyond just, the physical
But
mechanics.
more than just a prelude.
Much more. The guide even suggests things like spontaneous kisses, even in public, to make your partner feel really loved and desired.
Okay, so touching, kissing set the stage. Let's unpack this idea of Karezza foreplay. How is it different?
Well, the guide draws a sharp contrast with what it calls regular foreplay, describing that as potentially animalistic and out of control.
Ooh, okay, harsh. So Karezza foreplay is?
It's presented as much more mindful, a controlled exchange of energy. It's about really savoring the anticipation. Think meditative warm-up versus a rushed, purely physical thing.
Mindful,
Mm.
controlled,
Mm.
meditative. Got it. How does that apply to, well, the more direct stimulation?
That distinction is key there, too. When it comes to stimulating genitals during Karezza foreplay, the guide emphasizes slow, loving, and, again, meditative touch.
Slow, loving, meditative. And there was a specific tip, wasn't there?
Yeah, a pro tip, as the guide calls it. For a less lustful, more gradual warm-up, it suggests men might want to focus touch on the labia and vulva rather than going straight for direct clitoral stimulation.
Interesting. Build arousal more gently.
That seems to be the idea, building it in a more connected way.
Now, the guide also warns about energy balance. Active versus passive. Yang and yin.
Right. It brings in this concept of active or yang masculine, sexual energy versus passive or yin feminine energy.
Okay.
The idea presented is that for the energy flow they're aiming for, the man should primarily be in touch with his active energy during Karezza sex.
And too much passive receiving is problematic.
The guide suggests that, yeah, if the penis takes on a mainly passive role like being stroked or sucked excessively, it might cultivate more of that yin, receptive, or feminine energy in the man.
Ah, and that's why it's maybe down on masturbation too?
That's one of the reasons it gives. It sees masturbation as often turning the penis from the active initiator into the passive recipient, which it believes shifts that energetic balance away from the ideal for Karezza.
So it's not like receptive pleasure is totally forbidden, but be mindful.
Exactly. Be aware of the dynamics. The guide suggests maybe consciously compensating by adopting a more active, initiating mindset during intercourse itself to maintain that desired flow.
What about oral sex then? Where does that fit?
The guide mentions it can be part of Karezza foreplay, sure, but it suggests you might naturally find yourselves focusing elsewhere.
Why?
Because it's considered a less direct route for that core energy exchange compared to penis and vagina. But it can be useful for awakening those masculine-feminine polarities.
As long as you stay mindful.
Right. Avoid slipping into that purely orgasm-focused mindset. For fellatio specifically, the guide suggests thinking of it more like a slow, appreciative act, not rapid or mechanical.
And be careful not to overstimulate.
Yeah, cautioning against overstimulating the head of the penis, as that can easily trigger that orgasm-oriented thinking again.
Okay. What about the 69 position? People might wonder.
It acknowledges the appeal, definitely, but it advises caution, especially if you're new to Karezza.
Too stimulating.
Potentially, yeah. The visual aspect can be quite strong and might lead towards orgasm more easily. The guide recommends ensuring the woman is fully on board and maybe exploring it only after you've got a solid Karezza foundation, perhaps after a few months.
And the key is still gentle, loving, focusing on the energy.
Always gently awakening those energetic polarity.
What about things like sex toys or porn during foreplay?
The guide is pretty clear on that. It advises against them for Karezza.
Why is that?
The argument is that Karezza is all about a direct, controlled energy exchange between two people. Anything that creates a separation, like a toy or focusing on a screen, is seen as lessening that connection.
So keep it body to body.
Pretty much. It suggests most things you might do with toys can be achieved with your bodies in a more connected, mindful way. It reinforces this idea of sex as more natural, more intimate.
And porn is definitely out for warm-ups.
Strongly advised against. The guide argues watching others won't lead to a real connection with your partner because, well, your subconscious doesn't really distinguish screen from reality in that state.
Okay, that makes sense within this framework.
Uh,
So we've covered foreplay. Let's move to Karezza intercourse. The guide is clear this is mainly penis and vagina, right?
very clear, yes. That's seen as the primary mode.
And the reasoning.
As the guide explains it, Karezza is built on this idea of sexual energy flow. And that energy is believed to flow most purely, most efficiently, through the genitals in that specific connection.
Plus, it notes men enjoy it.
Plus, as the guide frankly puts it, what man doesn't enjoy that sensation? Fair point.
And kissing should continue during intercourse.
Absolutely, it emphasizes that. Unlike orgasm-focused sex, where kissing might stop for, say, a better view or more intense physical action.
Right.
Karezza, being less about the visual and more about touch and sensation, naturally encourages more kissing. It communicates love, complements the P and V connection, and really amplifies the benefits, according to the guide.
You mentioned full body connection earlier, the dance of the seven chakras.
Yes. It describes this energy exchange as a full body thing and highlights the powerful connection when lovers align their bodies mouth to mouth, body to body, right down to the genitals.
Chakras being energy centers.
Exactly. Energy centers along the spine. The guide suggests full body contact helps align these centers, allowing for a more powerful energy flow between partners.
Is this explained further?
Yeah, it draws on Hindu philosophy, describing the seven chakras. Full body-to-body contact aligns all seven, supposedly making the energetic exchange more potent.
Does this happen in regular sex too?
The guide acknowledges it can, but says it's often brief before couples shift to maybe more visually oriented positions. Karezza's focus on sustained connection allows for deeper processing of this alignment.
Any tips for height differences?
Yeah, it actually offers one. Suggests focusing on aligning the root, throat, third eye, and crown chakras, and the middle three will naturally tend to align as well.
Practical. What about nipple stimulation?
Also highlighted as key during Karezza intercourse.
Why specifically?
Well, stimulating the breasts and nipples releases oxytocin, the love hormone, right? So it fits perfectly with a style of sex focused on generating loving energy.
Makes sense.
The guide even playfully suggests that for a man, enjoying nipple stimulation while being intimately connected, well, it's pretty close to ideal.
But it's good for the woman too.
Absolutely. It emphasizes that loving oral or manual nipple stimulation during intercourse can feel even more intense for her, given how sensitive nipples are.
Any caveats?
Just a note of caution, not to drive her too quickly towards intense arousal just through nipple stimulation alone, because that oxytocin release can be really powerful. Keep it balanced.
Okay. The guide also mentioned something about just being still during intercourse.
Yes, it strongly encourages that. Simply remaining still, penis inside the vagina.
That sounds counterintuitive, maybe?
It might. It's described as a surprisingly powerful experience that often gets overlooked in orgasm-focused sex because we're kind of conditioned to keep moving.
And what happens when you're still?
The guide says you can really feel the connection, penis and vagina, the energy flow, this deep sense of being enveloped, embraced. It suggests that's where you might find that spiritual sexual connection people talk about.
What about talking during Karezza?
Very important, according to the guide. But the type of talk matters. Honest, kind, loving communication.
So not dirty talk necessarily.
It advises steering clear of the cruder language sometimes associated with porn. Instead, focus on expressing love, respect, complimenting your partner, talking about the joy of intimacy itself.
And this is arousing for her.
Incredibly so, the guide suggests. This sincere, gentle talk makes her feel safe, allowing her to open up more fully. It reinforces that need to feel it's okay to surrender.
What about eye contact?
Eyes play a role, yeah, though maybe differently than in purely visual sex. Eyes might be closed during deep kissing, sure.
But other times.
Other times, eye contact can really deepen the connection. The guide highlights how much energy and communication passes through the eyes. During intercourse, it can work alongside loving words to strengthen that bond.
The guide also mentions dominance. How does that fit with Karezza?
It clarifies this carefully. It's not about aggression or negative control. It's framed as leadership.
Leadership.
Yeah, exhibiting leadership qualities in life and in the bedroom makes a woman feel safe, secure, loved, comforted. It's presented as a gentle, empathetic leadership, channeling what it calls pure masculine energy.
Okay. What about different positions? Anything specific favored or discouraged?
It briefly touches on connecting from behind. It notes that spooning-style positions, with that close body contact and the chance for kissing and sweet talk, align better with Karezza principles.
Compared to positions that are more detached.
Right. Compared to positions that might focus the interaction primarily just at the genitals, with less overall body contact.
And definitely no mental fantasies during Karezza.
Strongly advised against. The guide acknowledges fantasies might spice up orgasm-focused sex, but argues that during Karezza, fantasizing actually pulls you away from the real connected experience with your partner. Stay present.
Let's talk practicalities. lubrication.
Ah, interesting point here. The guide notes that a woman's natural lubrication, it calls it jing juice sometimes,
Jing juice. Okay.
can actually be an indicator of whether you're doing Karezza right.
How so?
It sees that natural lubrication as a sign of genuine openness and connection, like you're creating the right energetic environment for her.
So minimize artificial lube.
That's the advice. It suggests her natural wetness will respond when she feels mentally, emotionally, and energetically open and safe.
What about anal sex? Does the guide address that?
It does. It acknowledges its place in culture, even notes some positive mentions in old texts, but advises caution within the Karezza context.
Why the caution?
Respecting the woman's body is paramount, as the anus isn't seen as a primary sexual organ in this framework. If it is explored, the guide recommends keeping it loving, focused on energy exchange, gentle, brief, and infrequent.
And the man should lead mindfully.
Yes, taking responsibility for guiding the experience carefully.
Finally, what about how long sex lasts?
Big difference here. Without orgasm as the explicit goal, sex can naturally last much longer. The limit is just mutual enjoyment.
Erections.
The guide notes, maybe obviously, that erections are a pretty reliable indicator of a man's overall health and well-being.
Okay, this all sounds great in theory, but the big hurdle seems to be avoiding orgasm. Let's get into no nut, preventing accidental orgasms.
Right, a critical aspect. The guide starts by referencing that ancient wisdom again, emphasizing the value of conserving sexual energy.
And it acknowledges this is a real challenge.
Absolutely. It says pretty much anyone practicing Karezza will face this, especially early on or maybe with a new partner. It's a skill to develop.
And the stakes are high if you slip up.
Well, the guide stresses that the benefits of retention build over time, but they can be diminished quickly by an unintentional release.
So one accident undoes everything.
Not completely, no, but it might lessen those superpowers, the focus, motivation, confidence, energy, libido that supposedly come with consistent retention.
Okay, so how do you prevent it? What's step one?
Step one, according to the guide, is becoming much more aware of your own arousal and the path it takes. It presents this model. Stages of arousal, 2 paths.
2 paths, what are they?
Okay, path 1, more common in regular sex. Erection, pleasure, lust, body preparing for ejaculation. Pre-orgasm, the war zone of intense arousal.
The war zone, okay. And path 2?
The Karezza path. Path 2 goes, erection, pleasure, bliss, a different state than lust. Peace and fulfillment.
So the key is recognizing that fork in the road between pleasure and lust bliss.
Exactly. And the guide strongly advises against lingering in that war zone of pre-orgasm. It compares it to sexual edging, which it also advises against.
So don't ride the edge.
Right. While backing away from pre-orgasm is possible, making it a regular habit is seen as detrimental. The guide redefines the edge. It's not being about to orgasm, but that earlier point where pleasure starts tipping into lust. Correct course before you get there.
Got it. What are the specific techniques then?
First, it's about recognizing the warning signs in your own body.
Like what?
Subtle physical cues, maybe sensations in the testicles or prostate, a fluttering heartbeat, breathing changes, muscle twitches, even a slight tightening in the throat. You have to learn your signs.
And knowing personal triggers.
Crucial. Those specific actions, words, sensations that can unexpectedly push you over the edge. And also being aware of your own natural cycles of arousal times. You might be naturally hornier and being extra cautious then.
Okay. Awareness is key. What about active techniques?
One of the simplest and most effective, the guide says, is just slow down and breathe deeply.
Slow down.
Yeah. It notes most orgasms don't happen during the really slow movements. Slowing down gives you time to notice energy shifts and adjust. Deep breathing anchors you in the moment, helps regain control.
What about muscles? The PC muscles.
Ah, yes, the pelvic floor muscles that contract during orgasm. The guide suggests becoming consciously aware of them and learning to relax them at will. That's a key skill.
Relaxing them is hard, though.
It can be. The guide actually mentions magnesium glycinate as something that might help relax those muscles if you struggle.
Interesting. Anything else muscle-related?
It also suggests consciously flexing other muscles, arms, legs, core during sex. This can create a more full-body experience and helps redirect that instinct to release energy just through orgasm.
Okay, slow down, breathe, relax PC muscles, flex others. What about this block technique? Sounds advanced.
It is presented as more advanced, yes, the block. It's a mental technique to stop an orgasm that feels like it's already started,
Yeah.
even past the point of no return.
How does that work?
It requires really strong delayed gratification skills. It involves a powerful mental no just shutting it down mentally, combined with deliberately shifting your focus purely to the raw, energetic sensations, letting go of the physical ones.
Wow. And that can actually work.
The guide claims it can, and it even suggests that demonstrating that kind of mental control can be quite impressive for your partner to witness.
I bet. What if you do have an accidental orgasm? Is it failure?
The guide is reassuring here. It says they can happen, especially when learning. View them as learning experiences, not failures.
Find the silver lining.
Exactly. They offer valuable data about your triggers and serve as a potent reminder of that ingrained habit of seeking orgasm that you're working to change.
Okay, makes sense. Let's shift gears to a concept you mentioned earlier. Karezza sex as sexual transmutation. What does that mean exactly?
Sexual transmutation, as the guide defines it, it's basically the process of letting that powerful sexual energy flow through you, but without releasing it in orgasm.
And then doing what with it?
And then consciously redirecting or transmuting that energy towards other parts of your life.
Like goals, creativity.
Exactly. Achieving goals, fueling creativity, even deepening your capacity for love. The core idea is that this fundamental energy source can be channeled for, well, higher purposes.
So it's not just about saving energy, but actively using it elsewhere.
Precisely. You learn to manage and retain it through Karezza, and then sexual transmutation is the next step, actively transforming and applying it for greater impact.
The guide breaks this down into steps, right? Cultivate, retain, apply.
That's right. 3 steps.
Can you walk us through those? What's cultivate?
Cultivate sex energy is about adopting a whole lifestyle that supports healthy sexual energy. This involves inner work, like calming your mind, reducing stress, avoiding negative influences.
Decluttering the mind, like it says.
Yeah, reducing exposure to stressors, practicing mindfulness, and crucially, avoiding porn and masturbation, which the guide sees as draining this energy you're trying to build.
What else goes into cultivating?
Diet is big. Eating nutritious food, being mindful of processed stuff, focusing on nutrient-dense options. Regular exercise, especially things like weight training, general wellness, minimizing exposure to toxins like from plastics.
And checking medications.
Right. Reviewing anything you take that might have sexual side effects. So that's cultivate. Then comes retain the sex energy.
Which is basically practicing Karezza sex.
Primarily, yes. That's the main method discussed for retention.
Okay, so cultivate, retain, and then apply sex energy. How did that work?
Applying it requires 2 main things, according to the guide. First, having a clear purpose, a significant goal, a project, something that really absorbs you.
Something challenging.
Yes, challenging and all-consuming, ideally. And second, consistently putting in the effort towards that purpose.
So transmutation doesn't make success automatic?
No magic wand, apparently. But it provides this potent energy source to fuel your efforts, to drive you towards achieving those goals.
The guide mentions a dirty secret here.
Yeah, it touches on this provocative idea that on a primal level, your body kind of knows that excelling at your purpose, achieving things, ultimately makes you more attractive. A biological feedback loop, maybe.
Fascinating. It also references ancient texts about retention benefits.
It does. It mentions the Yellow Emperor's classic, the Su Nu Ching, which lists these escalating benefits for retaining 1 time, 2 times, up to 10 times.
Culminating
Quite dramatically in what's described as immortality.
Wow. Okay, so maybe take that with a grain of salt, but the underlying point is increased vitality.
Exactly. Remember, these are historical perspectives, but the guide emphasizes that with consistent retention, you likely will feel a greater sense of vitality, potency, energy.
And how do you handle all that extra energy? Does it get overwhelming?
That's where the apply step is crucial. The advice is to actively, consistently channel that increased energy into pursuing your goals. Don't let it just build up aimlessly.
Okay, this sounds potentially powerful, but what if your partner isn't immediately on board? The guide addresses turning a woman into a Karezza girl, right?
Yes, it dedicates a whole section to that, starting with a really crucial point. It takes 2.
You can't force this.
Absolutely not. The guide acknowledges that women, just like men, are often influenced by cultural norms about sex, especially the focus on orgasm. It's not necessarily an easy switch for everyone.
So how do you even begin to attract a partner who might be open to this?
The guide flips that question. It stresses that attracting quality partners, as it calls them, starts with the man becoming someone respectable, someone to be proud of.
Like having achievements, self-discipline.
Exactly. Demonstrating achievements, self-discipline, leadership qualities, it pushes back against the idea of needing to trick or convince women, emphasizing mutual respect and genuine connection built on who you are.
Okay, so assuming you meet someone potentially compatible, how do you bring up Karezza? The talk.
Yes, the talk. The guide advises a relaxed, respectful approach. And crucially, have this conversation before you're actually in bed.
Don't spring it on her mid-makeout session.
Definitely not. It suggests starting with broader conversations. Talk about sexual energy, different philosophies of sex, ask open-ended questions like,
Yeah.
how does she view sex in today's culture? What's her take on the role of orgasm? Is she interested in more spiritual or healing aspects of intimacy? Gauge her openness first.
What if you're already in a relationship with regular sex? How do you transition?
Ideally, the guide says start with Karezza from the beginning, but if regular sex has been the pattern, it advises transitioning relatively quickly, days or weeks, not months.
Why so fast?
To avoid reinforcing that different orgasm-focused pattern of sexual connection, establish the Karezza dynamic early.
What about accidental orgasms when you're starting with someone new? Is retention even possible?
It reassures that yes, it's possible, but acknowledges slips can happen. Again, frame them as learning opportunities within this new dynamic.
What advice does it give for virgins interested in Karezza?
It encourages them to feel proud and confident. Whether they choose to disclose their virginity is up to them, but the focus should be on their commitment to this path.
And it warns against casual sex. Stranger danger.
Yeah, it emphasizes love as a purifying force for sexual energy. Casual encounters, it suggests, can dissipate this energy rather than build the deep connection Karezza aims for.
There's a line about great power, great responsibility.
Yes, highlighting the significant impact a man's sexual energy, retained or not, can have on a woman during intercourse. Be mindful of that connection.
Even in shorter-term relationships.
The focus should still be on the purity of intention, the guide suggests. How do you sell Karezza to a partner? It advises confidence and highlighting the benefits that she might find appealing. Maybe the deeper relationship connection, maybe the potential for shared growth, or even success if you're both transmuting energy.
Become her sex guru.
Yeah, it uses that phrase. Basically, share your knowledge, be a leader in exploring this, help her question maybe some conventional views she holds about sex.
And be patient.
Crucial. Give it time. It's an adjustment for her, too. Be prepared to address potential challenges.
Like what?
Like maybe a history of focusing solely on orgasm, differing levels of desire at times, or even a fear of losing control if she's used to driving towards release.
Does it mention if women can benefit from retention too?
It notes anecdotal reports of women experiencing similar benefits, increased energy, well-being from practicing orgasm retention themselves.
What about that idea? Do women need semen?
It tackles that. It debunks a flawed older study linking semen to curing depression. It discusses potential signaling roles of semen, but doesn't advocate for regular ejaculation just for her benefit, outside of actively trying to conceive. It touches on emerging science, too.
Okay, so that covers introducing a partner to it. What about other miscellaneous aspects, beyond the basics?
Yeah, it covers a lot of ground. Libido, for instance, linked to overall health, testosterone, recommends lifestyle choices for healthy hormones.
How should Karezza sessions end?
Aim for a hopeful, sweet conclusion. Leave her feeling connected, loved, wanting more intimacy later, not necessarily feeling like something is finished in the orgasm sense.
It mentions spiritual climax.
Briefly, yes, as a more advanced experience of intense energy release, distinct from physical orgasm.
How does a gentleman finish?
By prioritizing mutual satisfaction, which in Karezza means connection, love, shared energy, and maintaining open communication about the experience.
And the feeling after Karezza?
Contrasted sharply with orgasm-focused sex. The guide emphasizes feeling energized, vibrant, connected afterward, rather than depleted or tired.
Can you integrate it into daily life?
It suggests you can. Even brief Karezza sessions, moments of connected stillness or touch, can act as quick energy boosters during the day.
Is Karezza the same as edging?
No, it emphasizes they're different. Karezza doesn't involve intentionally teasing vital fluids right to the edge repeatedly.
Hygiene.
Basic common sense, maintain cleanliness, addressed briefly.
What about the big one? Prostate health. Isn't not ejaculating bad?
It addresses this common concern directly. It cites a lack of strong scientific evidence directly linking semen retention, as practiced in a healthy lifestyle, to prostate cancer.
It focuses on overall health benefits.
Right. It argues the overall healthy lifestyle that supports Karezza likely contributes more significantly to prostate health than frequency of ejaculation itself. It also briefly mentions the controversy around the PSA test's reliability.
Come.
Can be useful training wheels for orgasm control initially, the guide suggests, but ultimately, raw sex increases sensitivity and connection, which is preferred in Karezza.
What about kink? Polyamory?
The guide suggests Karezza prioritizes deep dyadic connection over, say, the thrill-seeking aspects sometimes found in kink, or the potentially diluted energy involved with multiple partners.
As of course.
Raises moral and health concerns, advising against it.
Alcohol.
Menstruation.
Advised moderation with alcohol? Menstruation is viewed as a natural pause, a time perhaps to focus more on transmutation rather than intercourse.
Porn and masturbation again.
Reiteration. They hinder retention and genuine connection, according to this guide.
Wet dreams.
Reassures that these involuntary emissions are generally considered less detrimental to energy retention than conscious ejaculation.
Clitoral stimulation, any final word?
It notes there's some debate or ongoing discussion around its precise impact on the overall energy balance within the Karezza framework.
Will Karezza get rid of feeling horny? It explains that Karezza doesn't eliminate desire, but transmutes that raw sexual tension into a more controlled, healthy energy, rather than a desperate need for release.
Is it fun? Is it hard work?
Emphasizes the excitement of exploration, that it can be fun, acknowledges it takes practice, it's achievable, but persistence is key.
Okay, the guide then shifts focus slightly to the procreative urge.
Yes, acknowledging this as a fundamental, powerful drive in humans, especially men.
It brings in Nietzsche, will to power.
Briefly, yeah. Connecting the procreative urge to this fundamental drive, it cautions against modern messages that might suppress or discourage procreation, suggesting that could be psychologically damaging.
What about arguments against having kids, overpopulation, etc.?
The guide counters those by emphasizing the natural drive to multiply and innovate as inherent to human progress.
It mentions the Karezza daddy.
Suggests fatherhood itself can be a powerful path for growth and applying that transmuted energy.
And dominance without release.
Physicians Karezza practice as training for a successful mindset, delaying gratification, maintaining focus and energy without the depletion of orgasm.
Then it asks boldly, Karezza sex, the cure for everything.
Yeah. It then lists this huge range of purported benefits: confidence, focus, energy, better relationships, well-being. Pretty much linking it positively to everything.
And it paints a picture of the future.
A rather utopian vision of the future, yes, where widespread Karezza practice leads to a better world, stronger families, less conflict, etc.
Followed by a call to action.
Encourage listeners or readers of the guide to try it, share the knowledge, contribute to this vision.
And it suggests further reading.
Yes, specifically The Art of the Bedchamber by Douglas Weil and The Tao of Sexology by Stephen Chang.
So there you have it. Wow. That was a comprehensive deep dive into the principles and the potential of Karezza sex, all drawn from The Gentleman's Guide to Karezza Sex.
Yeah, we've covered its core ideas, the claimed benefits, this whole concept of sexual transmutation. It's quite a framework.
What really stands out is how it offers such a different lens on sex, doesn't it? Shifting away from just immediate gratification.
Absolutely. Towards deeper connection, intentional energy retention, and maybe these broader impacts on life outside the bedroom.
Now, let's be honest. Some of the ideas we've talked about today, they might feel a bit unconventional, maybe even challenging to existing beliefs about sex and relationships.
For sure. And that kind of leads to a question for everyone listening, doesn't it? What are your first reactions to this idea of channeling sexual energy differently beyond just orgasm?
Yeah, how do these principles land with you? Do they resonate? Do they clash with your own experiences or beliefs about intimacy?
It's definitely something to chew on.
So, as you go about your day, maybe mull this over, what aspects of your own understanding of sex, of intimacy, might be ready for a deeper look, some further exploration?
Perhaps this conversation has just sparked a little curiosity, maybe a sense that there's potentially more to discover in this very fundamental part of being human.